Good morning, everybody, and welcome to the Rangers Review Morning Briefing. It is Monday, the 7th of October. I'm Derek Clark, and I'm joined this morning by, first of all, Joshua Barry. How's it going, Joshua?
Yeah, it's going not bad, Derek. Chris and I were there last night, 8 o'clock on a Sunday, which was an interesting experience. But fine, all good, mate. All good. How are you?
Yeah, not bad. Yeah, I'm not a big fan of that. That's my bedtime on a Sunday. So, please, no more 8 p.m. kickoffs on a Sunday. Thank you very much. Chris also joins us. How's it going, Chris?
Not too bad. It's a strange old week. That Sunday evening it's thrown my body clock and thrown my week out of all sync. So I'm going to have my days mixed up all throughout this week, no doubt. But it was 3 points. It was fairly straightforward. So it was a job done in that regard, I think.
Yeah, the good news is Rangers won, of course. They made heavy weather of it at times, but they got the job done. There's lots of talking points as well to delve into. Before we do that, just a bit of admin. I got a message last night. Again, many of you who love to tune into the podcasts on Apple and various other podcast providers. Just a reminder that there are now 2 versions of the Rangers Review podcast on Apple. So you're going to have to search for Rangers Review on there, and you should get the updated version. So if you start following that, you can now listen to the podcast up to date as well. So just search in the search bar Rangers Review, and it should pop up with the most updated version. If you do listen on any other platforms, folks, and it hasn't updated, please let us know in the comments, and I'll get on to Johnny and I'll get him to sort it for us. So just a bit of admin there for us before we get underway. And Joshua, 2-0 win last night. Vaslav Cerny reacting to his disappointment from Thursday. We'll play Philip Clement what he had to say about the Czech shortly, but he got the 2 goals, 2 fantastic goals, you've got to say, in either half. The first knocking it through the legs of his opponent before a left-footed curling finish past the goalkeeper. Mm-hmm. Goal number 2 in the second half, set up by Yanis Haji, who I'm sure we'll discuss in great detail. Great assist from him, rifled into Cerny, and he went one way, then the other, and then a right-footed finish. He does have a right foot after all, and he found the corner. Rangers had a number of other opportunities, you could say. St Johnstone also had opportunities themselves. They really should have done better with 1 or 2 of them. But Rangers made sure of the 3 points despite going down to 10. Yanis Haji sent off for a clumsy challenge. I don't think there's any disagreement that it was a red card after a VAR check, which is hugely unfortunate given that it was his long-awaited return to the first team fold. But what were your main takeaways from the game last night?
Yeah, Chris and I discussed it briefly after the game, which feels about 20 minutes ago, Chris, doesn't it?
Yeah.
But I thought it was fine. I mean, I think Rangers looked like they were in control for most of the game, but St Johnstone's pace up top, I think, caused Robin Proper some issues. John Suter generally defended well. It's another domestic clean sheet for Rangers. Clement kind of said it was an okay performance in so many words. That lacked at points incisiveness in the final third. Probably should have scored early on through Cyril Dessers. Ross McCausland was taken off at halftime because Clement wanted to do something slightly different on the left. But Cerny gave Rangers what he's not given them in a while, and what he certainly didn't give them on Thursday, which is a bit of incisiveness. I think, Derek, you're right to point out the fact that he went on his right-hand side. I actually think that Cerny at points hasn't been helped by the fact that, we know that James Tavernier's role is different now, or the right-back's role is different. They're not high and wide all the time. But I think in the last few weeks, it's become so exclusive. And this is partly maybe because Rangers don't have a winger on the left-hand side. It means they really need Cerny to stay out wide on the right, to hug the touchline, etc., etc. But he's not like a really powerful, pacey player, is he? And because that limits him sometimes going on the right-hand side, I think it makes him predictable on the left. So what we saw yesterday was more of maybe what we saw when he first came in that performance against Motherwell, when he moves inside into the channel and scores from that space instead of being hugging the right touchline. I remember speaking to his former manager at FC20 when he joined, and that was where he had his really good breakout season before he earned his move to the Bundesliga. I think it was the 3rd highest number of combined goals and assists, goal contributions in the Dutch league that season. what his ex-manager said is, look, he can start out wide on the right, but he's at his best when he's moving inside as opposed to the opposite. And you've seen that at points. I still think Derek could benefit from maybe playing with a Castle-Mears or a Sterling at points to give them a little bit more maybe running power on the outside. We know that Tavernier doesn't quite have the legs that he did, and I thought he was fine last night. I'm sure we'll come on to discuss him, but he also varied his game last night, Cerny, didn't he, by going on his right foot, and he looked more confident as well. So people can watch his press conference, which will be out slightly later on today. But yeah, I do just think that point of him moving inside the pitch instead of always being stuck out on the right-hand side is something that helped him. And that's the type of finish you expected to see more regularly from him when he came into the club. And we'll see if that provokes a few more.
Yeah, this is what the manager had to say about Cerny when he was conducting his post-match press conference.
I'm really happy for him because from the first moment he came into this club, he's been working really hard for the team. He was really down after Thursday by missing that chance, and he felt really responsible in that way because he knew it was a really important moment in the beginning of the game. If you can score, you have a totally different momentum of the game, and it can be a different game then. So he's experienced, and he talked about that with me. So it was a really open and good talk, but he didn't lose any of my confidence in that way. So he showed what I wanted to see. So after the disappointment, to react and to keep composure and not starting to doubt. So I'm really happy for him with 2 quality goals, but also not only that, but also on the ball and without ball doing the right stuff for the team. And he's gonna get more and more important minutes and moments the next couple of months because he's just in the building and starting to get to know the rest of the team and the way to run, the way to pass, when to do it, so to create his automatism. So I'm really pleased with him, not only as a football player, but also as a personality.
That was the manager in Vaslav Cerny, Chris. Neither of us had him in our predicted lineups prior to the game. I don't think many supporters would have liked to have seen him starting in the lineup given his recent performances. But yeah, fair play to the manager and fair play to the player as well. I thought he was one of his best, if not his best performance in the Rangers jersey last night. Although JG says we've asked more from our wingers, just wish he was doing it against Lyon and not St Johnstone. He now has to sort of do it on a more consistent basis, hasn't he?
I'm surprised he never looked up at the gantry and gave it a shush celebration just to silence his Rangers review critics that dropped him for the big game last night. I thought he played okay. He had the 2 decisive moments, but as the comment says there, you'd have rather he scored against Lyon or the chance that he had in Malmo. Those big misses take a lot of time to come back from. And as good as his goals were last night, I think he's still got a lot of work to do in that regard. It was better from him. There still has to be a lot more though. Now, you look at the options that Rangers have in those wide areas. I'm sure we'll come on and talk about Oscar Cortez, the manager spoke about last night. They just don't have the strength and depth in those wide areas. So.
Chris is frozen. That's it. What an image that is.
I was just thinking as well, Derek. I was thinking he's a hard man to please if he's calling a 2-goal performance okay, isn't he? But I think Cerny's like I think what Chris is touching on will maybe get him back. Yeah. Obviously it's too early for him, but what was he saying? I think it's gonna take him a little bit of time to win people back.
Yes.
Win people back maybe is a bit extreme, but he started with a lot of excitement and then he has had an underwhelming couple of months, hasn't he? So I don't know what you thought.
Having a go at the fans isn't advised either.
It's not great. You've got to be pretty good to do that, don't you?
Yeah.
Sorry, Chris, you cut yourself off in
mid flow. Yeah,
my iPhone cut me off, not me.
We got your Cerny point though, but I want to move on. Another player that's touched on there Well, I thought it was funny. Conor Barron obviously rested from the starting 11. The manager says it doesn't want to burn him alive. He might think he meant burn him out, but that certainly tickled me as interview on Rangers TV. But I get his thinking behind that. Nico Raskin came in. Joshua, what do you make of his performance?
Quite liked it. I like Raskin. Think we've discussed. I feel like we've discussed him so many times, and I was actually a bit surprised to see him in the starting 11 last night. I was surprised to see him at number 6. That for me is probably the role under Clement he can play. I think the number 8 role, and I'm sure we'll discuss this throughout the international break, Derek. See, if you watch Diomande, and I've been thinking about this the last couple of games, I feel like a lot of the runs he's making beyond the striker, a lot of the movements he's making for the team, they create space for others, and it's probably in line with what Clement is asking him to do. But I also almost feel that Diomande's his ability to do a lot of different things is kind of working against him, because he's not coming towards the ball as much. He's maybe not. I think he's playing about 40 passes per game compared to Barron's 60. Now, Barron's going to get on the ball more because he's playing in that number 6 role. But do you know what I mean? I just kind of feel like sometimes you see him making all these runs in behind. And yes, you noticed him when he wasn't there against Hibs. But I just feel like that role's maybe not quite getting the best out of him at the moment. Not just that the ball is always going over his head because Rangers are becoming a little bit less direct. Not just because, as we've discussed before, he spends his game with his arms out, sometimes asking for passes that haven't arrived, but because of those selfless runs he's making for the team. So on that point, Raskin playing in that number 8 role, Clement said against Hibs, didn't he, that he brought him off at half-time due to tactical reasons, etc., etc. Again, I just felt watching him last night, because he was getting on the ball more, he was staying in his position more. And after the hour mark, he hasn't played 90 minutes in a long time. After the hour mark, he lost his discipline a little bit, held onto the ball too long, got a stupid yellow card. But I think up until half-time, he was doing what you'd want him to do, which is stay in that zone, recycle possession well. Winning the ball back has always been one of his best traits, the fact that he's small, but he can really dominate an area. And I just think he deserves a little bit more game time on the back of that in that number 6 position. I'd probably rather see Barron moved higher for some games, and Raskin played as that number 6 as opposed to the opposite. Now, has Barron done well over the majority of his time in Rangers shirt? Yes, absolutely. But also, I think, as we've cautioned before, and as people have said before, to expect him to go and play 50, 60 games in that position is a bit unrealistic over the course of this season, given that he played, I think, 24, 25, 9 minutes in the league last season. So Raskin, yes, probably like what Chris is saying about Cerny, he needs to do it more than against St Johnstone in what was a fine performance, but no more from that. No more than that from Rangers last night. But I think I'd like to see him get a little bit of a run, maybe in that position as well, because let's not forget, he's not really had a run in the team, or not had a run in the team in the same position for probably well over a year at this point. And this was a guy who came to Rangers really highly rated. Some people questioned his decision to go to the Scottish Premiership after playing in Belgium and being very highly rated as a young player. Injuries haven't helped him, and he needs to prove he's durable enough. But I don't know about you guys. I think that he felt more comfortable in that number 6 role than I've seen him in other positions in that midfield under Clement.
Would you agree, Chris?
As I said to Josh on the show last night, I think that the most important aspect of last night for me was Raskin just getting the minutes under his belt. He also picked up that injury in the pre-season game at Ajax. It then takes some time to come back from that. By the time he does come back from that, I think Conor Barron has really started his Rangers career really impressively. That then makes it more difficult for Nico to then get in the team. I think did he get about 10 minutes or so at Parkhead, about 17 minutes or so against Edinburgh United, I think. He then gets the chance at Ibrox, is off at half-time. As Josh says, manager mentioned tactical reasons there. So it's been very, very stop-start, and he's not really had a period of rhythm in his game for a long, long time. He came in under Michael Beale, second half of that season. He looked impressive. We thought there's something here that can be built on, and we expected that first full season really to be Raskin taking his game on and really cementing himself in that Rangers midfield. For injury reasons, for form reasons, it never really happened. We then assumed that Clement coming in, and obviously the Belgian aspect to it, that Raskin would then get his chance. Again, there was injury issues. It took him a long time to finally get his chance. I thought he finished last season fairly well, even though Rangers obviously didn't. And you then come to this campaign, and again it's a bit stop start. So I do still think there's a player in Raskin. I think there's an asset in Raskin, but we need to see him get consistent game time. I mentioned to Josh actually before the game last night, is it going to be an either or with Raskin and Barron, and it's then Diomande playing alongside them, and then obviously Bayrami or Haji or Tom Lawrence at 10. Interesting to see how Clement kind of handles that over the next few weeks. I don't think Diomande has been a standout this season. He's someone that we've seen on the show has come in for a bit of criticism. I do wonder, is there going to be certain times where we actually see Raskin and Barron rather than Raskin or Barron, because they both look more suited to that. Certainly the way that the season has started, it's been that number 6 role that the manager has used them both in. I think we were all keen for a different profile of midfielder to come in during the last week or so of the transfer window. I think a proper established number 6 would make a big difference to Rangers. They didn't get it. They don't have it. It's going to be those two, I think, that can alternate in that role.
Yanis Haji came on at half-time, Joshua, to a great reception from the crowd, and never took him long to contribute to the game. His assist for Vaslav Cerny, great drilled ball into him to create the opportunity. And then the sending off, I think, listen, it's a clumsy challenge. I think it's a red in the modern day. I would say, I don't know if the St Johnstone boy was wearing shin guards. I mean, I know the shin guards these days are like tiny little, the smallest things you've ever seen in your life. I remember when I was playing, they're almost like big sheets of armour you wore on your shins. But I don't know if you had shin guards on, but maybe wear them and wear bigger ones to avoid getting hurt in future. But it was a red card. What did you make of his contribution?
Well, his pass was good, wasn't it? I mean, I did not expect him to come on it, as James is saying. I didn't expect him to come on at halftime, but that's an example of what he can do. I think Bayrami, that's what stood out to us so far about him, isn't it? Is the fact that he can pick a pass and he can wait a pass in a way that probably others. Rangers don't really, I would say, have a player like that. Raskin's more of a ball carrier. I think Barron can play through the lines at points, but maybe from deeper in the midfield. Diomande at points as well. But yeah, I didn't expect Haji to come on at halftime purely because Clement normally, as we know, when a player comes in as a new signing, and that's what effectively, not to hit the cliche klaxon, but he's not been training with the first team up until last week. So you expected maybe it'll be after the international break that he's actually introduced into the team. But Clement again said effectively he didn't think McCausland was giving him enough incisive actions on the left-hand side. And that's what you're going to see more and more with Rangers, I think, which is why Cerny needs a little bit more help from the right back to vary what's happening on the right-hand side. And I thought you saw that a lot more last night. Rangers' right-hand side was much better than it's been in recent weeks. Chefty's going to be your kind of high and wide option on the left-hand side. That'll allow Bayrami and the number 10 to play inside in the pockets. And then on the right, you'll maybe have Cerny as the widest option with the right back pushing up. I know we're going to come on to James Tavernier, but I think Haji and Bayrami and Lawrence, they're going to be alternating between those positions in there. What people have said, I think, rightly since summer, is that if Rangers and Haji could come to a resolution about this contract issue, which was keeping him out of the team and led to, the discourse on either side, Clement saying what he said in press conferences, Haji on his Instagram story, Haji speaking at the start of summer, if there was a way that you could get him to resolve that contract issue financially so that he could come back into the team, he'd be a better option than what Rangers had. Otherwise, Haji's a better option than Dowell. I think it's fair to say that. And he plays a pass that Dowell probably doesn't play coming off the bench last night and then therefore strengthens the squad. Obviously won't be involved for a little bit because of that red card. But I do think people will be probably a bit encouraged to see him back. He's a popular player with the fans. Again, I don't expect him to start week in, week out for Rangers, but that's probably what he will give you. A bit of impact, a bit of quality from the bench, but just will have to work on his tackling or not tackle at all.
Yeah, I'm really pleased at seeing him back in and amongst it. A lot of comments coming in saying how many games will he miss? I don't think it'll be many, Chris, surely. I know it's a straight red, but it's, this is what the manager had to say about it. He said, I had the feeling that there was not much intensity. I had a really big doubt about the red card, but if I see the images, it's a clear red card. There's no intensity in the tackle. It's more clumsy, a clumsy challenge from a player who's tired at that moment. It's really like an attacking player making a foul. Giannis didn't have any intentions to tackle in that way. It was unlucky, but it's a clear red card, so I have nothing to say about that. Would it be a one-match ban or would it be a two-match ban, do you reckon?
Two, I would think, no. I'll try and double-check it with the SFA later on and see if they can give us a definitive on it. But I think as the manager said there, and then as myself and Josh spoke about last night, it's clearly a red card. I don't think you can have any complaints about it. But I think the manager called it fairly. I think he can assess that situation quite well. It's not one that Haji has gone out to do the boy. It's not one he's gone in with excessive force. It's late. No. It's a bit reckless. It's rash. Yeah. It's a red card. Probably should have been a red card first time around if you've been critical of the match officials.
That's why VR's there, isn't it?
That's why it's there. But I think if you are the referee, I think questions should be asked of why are you not saying that's a red card straight away rather than a yellow. But that's for the SFA to answer. I'm sure there'll be a video out of Willie Collin over the next couple of days where he can explain that one. But I said it wasn't a malicious act from Haji. It was a forward making a challenge. As Josh said, I think if we just ban him from tackling, hopefully that should alleviate such a problem.
Yeah, absolutely. And the big moment of the night, of course, Horatio Casemiro coming on at right back, and I was delighted to see James Tavernier pushed up. Look at Joshua chuckling away there. But, my dream was realised last night. This is what the manager said. I had to say about it.
Also circumstances of the game, but of course everybody knows that Tav has really big qualities in the final third, with assists and with goals. So it's something we can do in moments. We will see. But it's also that moment I only had 2 changes more to make. And so I made that decision. It's not something that you will see every week, I think, but we will see. Sometimes you get surprises out of that kind of choices. We will see.
We will see. Listen, we've seen it a little bit against Hibs, did we not? When Casemiro and Sterling were on, Tav was sort of playing in the sort of inverted role ahead of Casemiro. But Joshua, what do you make of this? I've got to say, I like it.
Yeah, well, there's like millions of Twitter comments and morning briefing comments and message board comments that people have. There's a lot of vindicated people this morning at Tavernier. I know, as you mentioned, there's obviously been other occasions, but it just felt a bit more pronounced last night. Listen, I think the main point about it, Derek, is when is Clement speaking about not burning Conor Barron? We'll say burning Conor Barron out, but. Because I don't want the alternative to be clipped up, but Tavernier continues to not get rotated, which I think is an issue. I've said for a few predicted teams now that I think Casemiro should get a start in there. I think it looks good. Last night is probably the type of game that suits Tavernier a little bit more because he's spending more time in the opposition half. But as mentioned, I would quite like to see a Sterling or a Casemiro behind Cerny, and in the same way that Chefty, a younger player on the left-hand side at fullback, has brought a little bit of a different dimension to the left-hand side. Could that translate over to the right? Will we see it more regularly? Maybe. Obviously, the system's different now. So previously, the argument of play Tavernier higher didn't make sense because he was always, he always had a covering player in midfield, and the idea was for him to play higher up the pitch anyway. Now it is slightly different because he's inverting more. He's not quite got the legs to get up and down the pitch. I don't think it's necessarily a long-term solution, but I do think the Rangers have an issue at right back at points, and that happened against Lyon. Clement got the call wrong at right back against Lyon, I think, pretty clearly, because Tavernier really struggled to deal with Fofana on that night. I think Casemiro and Sterling are better defensive players. But does Tavernier have quality? Does he have qualities? Of course he has qualities that he's shown consistently. So that's why I was surprised he wasn't rotated out last night, because I thought, listen, Rangers won the game and he played fine. So it's not a story after it. But I think you protect the player a little bit more if you do rotate him out and you don't rely on him at every second of every game. So listen, who knows what's going to happen there because of what Clement said in the summer compared to the amount of minutes that Tavernier is actually playing. I'd be surprised if we see it more often, but I'm happy it happened just for you, Derek, and others that you can say that you saw it. There you go.
Yeah. Next up, stick him up top, and then they will see the magic happen. We're going to talk about it at the front line in a minute, but Mackie with the point says that Nana was unlucky not to score. What a hit. Yeah, absolutely. He was very close to netting his first Rangers goal late on in last night's game. Lots of comments coming in about the front line. Chris, Cyril Dessers not in form at this moment in time. Malky says, I don't know why Dessers was in a huff when he gets subbed. He was crap. Listen, I like my strikers being in a bit of a huff when they come off and get subbed. That means that they're not happy. They shouldn't be happy coming off. And he certainly wasn't a great game from him. Hasn't played well recently. It's a problem for Rangers, isn't it? The front line.
It's a problem with no obvious answer right now because the options just aren't there. Igaman came on again last night, got another handful of minutes, but contributed little. I think it's probably been fair. That's not to say that Dessers was outstanding during his time in the pitch. Didn't offer an awful lot at all, and seems to be going through one of these spells. Now he was good for a couple of games, then has a couple of games off, and then he scores. Do you think, well, that's us going to be back on track again? And then I thought Thursday night didn't really bring a lot to the party. Not that anyone did outside of Bayrami, and last night again there just wasn't a lot in the game for him. So. I think we spoke about it last week, Derek. Do Rangers have enough goals in the side? I think we both agreed the answer is no. But how they solve that right now, I'm not really sure because the options that they've got are the options that they've got. The manager is very set in his approach. Even last night, could he have done something different? Perhaps gone with Igaman and Dessers in the side at the same time. You think it's St Johnstone at home. Rangers going to see a lot of the ball. Why not do something slightly different? He obviously decided not to. So I think what he's got, and I don't really see how it's going to change. He also referenced Danilo and his post-match last night. Hopefully he's back just after the international break. Getting Matondo back gives him another option, but I think we've spoken enough, and I think we all agree that Rabbi Matondo is not a long-term match-winning game changer for Rangers. So they just have to try and find ways to win these games. The fact they're keeping another domestic clean sheet is good. They're going to have to keep a lot of them because they don't look like going into these games and blowing any domestic team away right now.
No, they don't score enough goals. We spoke about this last week, and it's an area of concern, Joshua, that the striking department. I said it before. I thought Rangers would have went out and at least got a free agent in short term until at least January. I think there's loads of experienced campaigners out there that you could at least turn to on the bench to try and get you over the line. But what do you make of Dessers and the striking situation?
I think Rangers look like a team who have, near enough 10. If we talk about the Oscar Cortez fee, which obviously is next summer, they look like a team who have about £10 million worth of their, relative to their squad size, their attacking quality out of the picture. So you've got Danilo, who, should Rangers have signed another striker this summer, obviously they'd like to sign another player in a few positions. Chris has spoke about the number 6 already. They were limited in part by that Champions League windfall not coming in, by the inability to get certain players out, but also the fact that they have Danilo on the payroll. There's still a belief that he can come back and contribute. Obviously, he's not been able to do that since he came into the club, so that's a hard argument to make until we see it. He had that setback with his injury. The plan being that Igaman can then arrive without, not arrive without pressure, but he can play under the fact that Dessers and Danilo are there for the first few months of the season. Danilo not being there, and he came on and scored a goal against was it Ross County, wasn't it, in that 6-0 win. Then had that issue in training. Clement speaking last night, said he's hopeful he'll be back by the end of the international break. But Oscar Cortez won't. He just said ambiguously towards the end of his press conference that it looks like it will be long term. They're just not a big enough squad, I think, really to carry injuries to the fact that it's much like last season, Derek, when you had Sima and Cortez and Danilo out and Campbell at points, and you could feasibly say that would be your starting front four if everyone was fit. It would be. And Rangers look then like a team who are missing those four players. I think it's pretty similar this year. Barami looks like he has quality and he started pretty well. Cerny, we've discussed, hasn't been great. Better last night. Matondo obviously is really injury prone. I don't think you can rely on him. Dessers is what Dessers is, and that if you go away to Kilmarnock, which is Rangers' next game, isn't it, after international break? Yeah. Doesn't give me great enthusiasm that that's a game for him if Rangers are struggling to get up the pitch and they maybe need someone to hold it up. So they are pretty limited up top, and that's probably in part due to misfortune, the injuries suffered by certain players, and how they've looked to build this squad. It is leaner, it is smaller than last year, and you definitely are seeing, I think, the effects of those two players in particular when they are fit, when they arrived. If you think of the anticipation when Danilo arrived, I think of the early excitement about Cortez. They are two players with quality, but they've just been so injury prone, and Rangers squad isn't big enough to carry that, I think.
No, just on Cortez then, like you say, Joshua, the manager said it's a longer term thing. Lots of comments coming in off the back of that. Denzel with the point says, big blow regarding Cortez injury. Must question signing him. Low is contracted. There must be a get out clause, surely. Feel sorry for the lad. Rangers with that obligation to buy, I think, is it around £4 million there or thereabouts next summer, pretty much like the Diamandi deal. But we haven't seen enough of him, and whether he comes back, when he comes back, who knows? There are serious question marks over this, Chris.
And it's money that Rangers have tied up in a player that's contributing nothing. And how many times have managers and the board found themselves in that situation over the last couple of seasons? The bill for fees and wages on players who have not been able to get on the pitch over the last 3 seasons or so must be absolutely terrifying. You're talking tens of millions of pounds gone out the door for little return, and it's an issue for Rangers. Obviously, financially, it's a huge issue in football terms because, as Josh had just outlined there, they just don't have the strength and depth. They just don't have the quality options. You can't afford to go and commit that fee to a player for a main area of the side, for an area of the side that's so integral to the way that this manager wants to play, and then not have him at the same time as you lost Matondo. It's not ideal. And also, see a number of comments, people coming in saying how long term is long term. We don't know. So the manager just said long term, and that was the end of the press conference. So we'll try and find out. But I think you can certainly rule him out for the foreseeable future, and that's then going to require Rami to operate a position. It's going to require the managers to try and find solutions to problems that he hoped and he assumed Rangers had seen the back of. And he spoke a lot about injuries towards the end of last season. This was meant to be the change point in that, and Rangers are still finding themselves back in the situation and facing familiar and very costly problems, unfortunately.
Yep, absolutely. Who knows when we're going to see Oscar Cortez back in a Rangers jersey. Right, before we wrap up, Nick McLaren gets in touch, says happy birthday to Gail, loves the jersey and loves the show, watches every day. Well, happy birthday, Gail. Hopefully you have a fantastic day today. And as you all know, myself and Joshua heading down to the Big Smoke a week on Wednesday for our latest live show alongside Mark Haitley. At the Volley in London. A lot of London Bears down south, and if you fancy a little trip down to London, then tickets are still available. £16.96 for a ticket for that. The link for tickets is in the description below this video. So if you fancy a wee night out down in London, then do go and get your ticket. Should be a good event, Joshua, I'd imagine, myself and your good self alongside Rangers royalty.
Yeah, and I didn't realise it was a week on Wednesday, but October's kind of snuck up on us, hasn't it? So, yeah, looking forward to seeing whoever is there. And as mentioned before, we'll have a bit of everything, hopefully, for people, a bit of time speaking with Mark, a bit of time speaking about current Rangers events, myself and yourself. And yeah, it should be a good night. Great location by all accounts. Really good location that a lot of people now get their football fix in London. There you go, Derek. Yeah. So looking forward to it, and always always good fun to do a live show together, even though we've not done many. So we'll try and do one up the road again at some point, because a few people have asked. But for now, it's going to be in London a week on Wednesday.
Yeah, absolutely. Cannot wait for that. Right, that'll do us there. Big thanks to Chris and to Joshua as ever. Those of you that are Rangers Review Extra members, I think we'll record a Q&A this afternoon, so I'll stick the link out on the community page. Get your questions in, folks. I'm sure there'll be many, and we'll answer as many as we possibly can. Right, if I don't speak to you later on, enjoy your Monday, and bye for now.